Hi, everyone. My name is Lynn Fisher. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer here at Newlab. And thank you for joining the membership info session that we have planned for you today. We started these info sessions at the end of last year, really as a way to communicate information about our membership, our community, and also as a way to give a virtual tour of some of our spaces. So during this 45-minute session, we're going to give you a little bit of history and background on Newlab, but then spend more time on our membership community and the benefits of being a part of the community. And then lastly, but we have a great honor of having one of our CEOs and founders speak with us today, Sean Pedersen from StrongArm. And then we'll leave time at the end for Q&A. But also, please feel free at the bottom right-hand part of your screen to ask questions along the way. So what is Newlab? Newlab is a community of inventors and experts applying transformative technology to solve some of the world's biggest challenges. And we do this through membership, but we also do this through something called our innovation studios, which I'll talk a little bit more about later. And we bring together entrepreneurs, engineers, and inventors to solve big challenges and work with industry leaders to create sustainable solutions and enterprises. We employ technologies like computer vision, AI, quantum computing, all to transform what matters most. And those are areas in health, the environment, cities, and our infrastructure. So some of our recent stats, and I'll talk about some of these in more detail later on in the presentation, but just from a high level, I'll highlight a couple of those. We have 160 member companies that call Newlab their home. That comprises 800 engineers, entrepreneurs, and inventors, all applying transformative technologies to things that matter. In order to become a member at Newlab, we have an application process. Our acceptance rate is about 15%. So we really look at how our companies focused on frontier tech and transformative technologies. Are they looking for a collaborative community? And do they want to make an impact? So it's really creating a curated environment of people that are like-minded, that want to solve big problems. So this is our headquarters. We have two locations in Brooklyn. This is in the Brooklyn Navy Yard, Building 128. It was a shipbuilding facility during World War I and World War II, and really known for advanced manufacturing. Our founders had a vision of bringing innovation and advanced manufacturing back to the Navy Yard, back to Brooklyn, and back to New York, and really developed this space so that it could be a home for people to do so. So it's open, there are 90-foot ceilings, there is prototyping equipment within the space, and there's a range of places where you can grow your company, from a flexible seat or desk to a private loft or office. Our second space in Brooklyn is 77 Washington. I'm actually here today on the first floor, and Sean will be speaking from a location upstairs on the 6th floor today. Their company is actually based here. So we opened up 77 Washington with the idea that you can start your company as a 2-person team at our headquarters with flex desks, and then grow and thrive to where you may need a whole floor to dedicate your company and grow your company as StrongArm has done. Here's just some other images of our space at 77 Washington. There is a beautiful garden. There are areas for flexible work, but also, as I mentioned, dedicated floors for companies that need the space. So just a little bit of maybe accolades to pat ourselves on the back a tiny bit, but we have been named and have been honored to be recognized by some top tier publications for the great work that our members have been doing and for the space that we've been able to build here in Brooklyn. And we were also honored last year by Fast Company and named Innovation Company by Design. And a number of our member companies were also mentioned. So it was a great honor to be included as an awardee by Fast Company. So next I'd like to get into membership and our community and our benefits. So we really believe we have a dynamic community, which adds to how ideas are collaborated upon and how people work together. So 70% of our founders have a master's or a doctorate. 23% of our founders are female, and 39% are serial entrepreneurs. And we think this is important because it really creates an ecosystem and an environment where we find founders are mentoring each other, giving guidance, especially if it's not been their first entrepreneurial journey. And then another piece that's quite interesting and we're proud of is that 38% of our member companies have chosen to move to Brooklyn and to Newlab from another location. So from locations abroad, but other places in the US, because they have found that being a part of this community is beneficial for growing their company. So we like to say our members are building the future, and it's not an exaggeration. Here's just 4 examples of companies doing really interesting things across a spectrum of transformative technologies. Farm Shelf, which is building indoor sustainable farming systems. Honeybee Robotics, which is developing advanced robotic systems for the toughest environments, including Mars. They have a drill that is on the Mars rover currently. OpenBCI is developing a technology to harness brainwaves to control a wide range of devices. And then also Foam, which is a company creating a map of the world through spatial blockchain applications. So our CEO likes to say we have a Noah's Ark of frontier technology. There really is a great span of people working on diverse technologies, but also have very different perspectives. And we think that also adds to the real fabric and strength of our community. Another thing that we feel like points to the strength and value of the community is how it's grown. So when we opened our doors in 2016, we had 23 member companies. We now have a little bit over 160. When we opened, those companies were valued at $175 million in aggregate. Today, they're valued at over $4 billion. So we really feel like that's a testament to the great work that they're doing, the value and impact that they're making. And we hope that the resources that we've been able to deliver as Newlab can really help them grow and thrive while they're members. So here are 3 areas when we talk about how Newlab really helps member companies grow. One is collaboration and community, and I think I've spoken a fair amount about that, but that really is an important piece. And when we talk to members about what's important, we hear time and time again, it's about how they're able to collaborate formally and informally with other members. In fact, Sean from Strong Arm has some great stories about that, which we'll get to. But the other thing is just the space that we've created and the culture. As an example, when you walk in our front doors, you don't sign an NDA, you don't see black drapes over windows. It's very much an open environment to be able to share ideas. And then secondly, what is really, I think, sets us apart is our prototyping and product realization capabilities. So not only do we have $5 million worth of equipment invested in our headquarters in areas of an electronics lab, of 3D printing, CNC, and textiles, but we have on staff, full-time staff that will help you bring your sketch and your idea to fruition in a very quick and agile way right in our headquarters. And then lastly, our pilot and investment opportunities. So I'll touch a little bit more on this, but one area is through the partnerships that we have with corporations that allow our members to pilot their technologies, really see how they can advance them in real life situations, in real world environments, and then also opportunities for investments. So we do have relationships with a network of investors. And one that I'd like to point out, which is quite interesting, is that we partner with Google X. And on a quarterly basis, our members can pitch their moonshot ideas to Google X. And they're really looking for ideas that can change and make a positive impact on 1 billion people. So that's just one example of ways in which we are able to provide pilot and investment opportunities to our member community. And then again, our studios, I mentioned it initially when I talked about Newlab, but this is really an advantage, I think, for members who want to be able to advance their solutions, get real world feedback. So we work with corporations like Verizon and Ford, and they come to us with problem sets or challenges, and we apply entrepreneurial thinking to solve those challenges or advance those technologies. So it's really a great opportunities for our members to have exposure to potentially corporate clients, to be able to test their products and solutions, and then also potentially get awarded contracts and or investment. So we also work in the mining industry to make it safer and more sustainable. And then we also work with cities like New York in order to make it more resilient and more equitable. So I'm going to talk a little bit about membership types and process, but please note we're going to have a Q&A session at the very end, but feel free to use the button on the bottom right if you have any questions as we're going through the rest of the materials here. So Newlab membership really spans for different member needs and company needs, from a team of 2 that might want a flex membership to a team of 5 that may have a cluster of dedicated desks, to a team of 20 to, let's say, 50 team members that can take a private loft or studio space in our headquarters in Building 128, or a full floor here at 77 Washington to really grow and advance their team. And we do, as I mentioned, have an application process, which you can find on newlab.com. We are looking for teams that are tackling challenges that positively impact the world. We're looking for teams that have a viable product, also a clear roadmap, and teams that are eager to contribute to the Newlab community. So we look at membership and applications on a rolling basis, and we really encourage people to apply. And we're also open to setting up calls and questions if prospective members want to get in touch. So today, as I mentioned, we're going to be speaking with member company StrongArm. They joined when we first opened our doors, actually before we opened our doors at Building 128 in the Navy Yard as a member. So they were one of our original members here at Newlab, and they are developing data collection, assessment, and safety solutions for the industrial worker, or what StrongArm calls the industrial athlete. So I always think it's better to hear from our members directly on how they've been able to work with Newlab and advance their company and how they've been able to utilize the community and resources to grow. So welcome, Sean.
How you doing? Thanks for having me.
Sure. So again, Sean Pedersen is CEO and founder of StrongArm. And I thought, we could talk a little bit about your journey in growing the company. What I thought was interesting, Sean, is that you've had a number of pivots of the company that were insightful, that allowed you to really take advantage of what was the strengths of your company and really take advantage of what was happening in the industry. And then most recently work with Newlab on a pilot for getting people back to work. So actually the technology that John and his team built allowed us to get safely back to work at Newlab. But I think what we'll do is just turn it over to Sean, and maybe you can tell us a little bit about your background and why you started StrongArm.
Sure, absolutely. I think first thing is, you mentioned we did have a number of pivots, and that was what was so attractive to Newlab, is that we would be able to do this. The space that we're entering, you said, is industrial safety. It's $3 trillion are spent every year around the world on injuries for people that are just going to work. It's a massive problem. There's a million ways to solve it. And we started out with a very hardware-centric product. We made these exoskeletons. And this is the first thing. And it's basically a quasi-robotic suit you wear to go to work every day. And now we're a big data company. And we're even focusing on insurance. We're focused on machine vision. So being able to adapt and being able to have the right resources, the community, and the support to do so is really why we love Newlab. But why we started StrongArm was, again, to solve the massive hole, or the pandemic size issue that are these injuries for people that are just trying to put their kids through school or put food on the table. I grew up working my family construction company. My father passed away on the job. So for the last 8 or 9 years now, we've been trying to solve this problem. We started out with exoskeletons, and we developed those in school, where I went to Rochester. When I came down, I needed a place in New York City to grow the company that would also let me build things. At the time, one of the founders of Newlab, Scott Cohen, found us up in Harlem in a basement with a couple labs and way too many pieces of equipment. We had more products than people at the time, and Scott offered us a much more comfortable home. So we moved down here while Newlab was under construction, and we're actually able to beta our exoskeletons inside of Newlab as it was being built. So kind of a beautiful partnership from the get-go. While we're in there, we started out with, I believe it was 5 employees. And through the last number of years, we've grown into, as we said, we pivoted to a data business. We're able to use some folks like 10x Beta to help us spin up sensors for the first time. And now we're pushing the upper limits of 50 people, and we're focusing on driving that data into the greater ecosystem. So that's where we are. That's happy to be here.
Great. And what do you think is the type of ecosystem that's needed for a company like yours to thrive? Maybe things that you've experienced at Newlab or even outside of our member community. What do you think are the key elements along the way that you have seen have been impactful for the entrepreneurial journey of growing your company?
So I think in addition to just having the resources, having the physical location, having the ability to prototype was key. And I think you could say table stakes for a number of places, but obviously this is a rarity in New York City in general. But the thing that makes it even more special, I believe, is just the mix of a culture. And I think that's hard to define, particularly in the tech world, to define something that has a particular culture. And in Newlab, quite frankly, everyone is just so gung-ho about making new things, about things that are going to innovate and change the world, that there's a real lack of ego, I think, that makes it really a collaborative environment that enables us to say, hey, even though we literally make exoskeletons for guys that are digging ditches, how can you turn us into a machine vision data science business and then help sell new forms of insurance? That's not a crazy sentiment to have in Newlab because of the type of culture and support that's there. So I think that is the thing to us that is most appealing, and really what is the most unique asset of what you're able to foster, and especially with things like this.
Right. And I agree, and I hear that, and I experience it too, just walking around our hallways and people being very open to talking about ideas, exchanging ideas. One person told me about that as they were waiting online for coffee, they talked to another founder, gave them input on something around supply chain and saved $10,000 along the way, or $100,000 rather along the way. Just like little things, and maybe just not on saving money on supply chain, but also just ideas about switching and pivoting your business to data collection versus just the exoskeleton, just the hardware.
Yeah, and there's a lot of people that know a lot about a lot of things, and I think it makes for some really interesting and productive conversations.
Great. And maybe you can tell us a little bit about, because I think it's of interest of everyone right now, and people are surprised to find that we have about 150 members coming back to our space on a daily basis, and in big part due to the work that you were able to pilot and because of your technology. So maybe you can take us a little bit through the exact technology of the sensor that you have today, the Fuse, and how we were able to use it during the pilot at Newlab to get people back to work safely.
Absolutely. So the StrongArm risk management platform is based off of this Fuse wearable sensor. And what we do is we use this smart dock to distribute these at, local warehouses or at automotive plants, at manufacturing facilities where people are moving or around a lot of dangerous and moving objects like fork trucks, and the injury rates are high. We simply are measuring all of those types of risk, whether they be ergonomic, whether they be proximity based, whether they be, blind or moving objects coming around a corner. We provide an alert and we help avoid that injury. When COVID hit, a lot of our folks were in supply chain, and the EHS professionals in particular, their hair was on fire because in addition to dealing with the challenges of COVID, contract tracing, taking temperatures, getting people in the door, lining people up for the right types of testing, they were also dealing with 10x loads in a season that was typically the down season, the slow season. But now people are ordering from home. The supply chain was kind of on fire, and we needed to enable these groups to get back to work. What we wanted to do, and what we did, was essentially reconfigure some of the features on this sensor to provide contact tracing and social distancing. So two users are wearing the sensor. When they get close to each other, it'll buzz, it'll light up. It'll tell each other to step away, but it'll also record how close they were so that if we ever needed to get forensic and do contact tracing, we can do it in an instant because we're based in a time series database. So it was a really cool technology that we were able to develop out of essentially the need for our clients, but it's incredibly sensitive information and data that we're collecting and insights we're driving. So we needed a place to deploy those at scale. And Newlab, luckily, was the first organization that would allow us to do such a thing. And it was Sean Stewart who was looking for something particular in this vein to get the operations running, because this is the kind of leadership Newlab has that is innovative, that wants to pull projects in. And it was a really nice fit for us. We were able to spin up the prototypes. We're able to deploy them on the staff at Newlab. We're able to open Newlab, and it was actually one of the first businesses to open at some form of scale during the swing of the pandemic here in Brooklyn, and that's something we're really proud of. But the result was that we're able to deploy this to thousands of people and thousands of our clients. We strengthened client relationships. We helped our clients get back to work, and they're doing it safer than ever. And it allowed us to evangelize new types of clients that wouldn't normally be in the typical purview. We really were able to take advantage of the fact that Industry 4.0 has a significant impact on the way that the economy is moving. And we basically elevated the conversation of safety overall. So through that project, the really compelling thing about it is it also identified some of those underlying markets, and it was able to speed us up enough that we justified a new sensor as well. So we're able to spin up a whole new supply chain and develop a new, more ergonomic, more user-focused friendly sensor that is a little bit smaller, a little bit more compact, and enables us to take advantage of the fact that new people are looking at safety in different ways. And it's our goal at StrongArm that if you can measure it, you can manage it. So as long as people give us the time to understand where our thesis sits, we can embed and we can develop very rapidly new forms of hardware to address their need and optimize it for that need. We're able to do that exercise and demonstrate that benefit through Newlab, and the whole narrative really benefits us moving forward and strengthening our clients as we become a leader in what we call industrial safety science.
Amazing. That's so great, Sean. And you did mention that you worked with one of our other member companies, 10x 10x Beta, which they do a lot of amazing industrial design work and really think about strategically about products. Can you tell us how that came about?
Yeah, absolutely. We had a need to deploy these sensors. We had built the first set of prototypes for ourselves in our labs at Newlab. We were able to leverage some folks in the ecosystem nearby to develop the early prototypes, and that was a connection we had through Newlab as well. And we manufactured them over at Long Island City in a factory that's a partner of Newlab's. When we went to deploy that at scale now, once we had interested clients, there was a number of things that needed a level of sophistication, deployability, manufacturability, and most importantly, data security. And 10x Beta was able to help us get through a lot of those challenges and really execute some substantial and really awesome industrial design work. We did a lot of really cool science, and the reason it came about is because they were our neighbors, and we just talked, and I think we became friends through the happy hours at Newlab, and we ended up working with them for about 8 months, spinning up this particular product, and worked with each other on a couple of other things. And they're a design shop right in Newlab, but they're more than that, right? It's another room of people that know a lot of things, but they also have the same level of culture, and we're able to actually create quite a good relationship and support each other. And that's how we were able to deploy this product to the first 30,000 people that we had on the platform, was with designs that we built with them.
Amazing. And we talk a lot about the flexibility of our space at Newlab and how companies can grow. Can you talk a little bit, Sean, about how you were able to go from 5 employees when you started at Newlab to 50 and taking over a full floor here at 77 Washington, and what that journey was like?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, a couple of huge things for us is we need a space where we can actually build things. So that kind of ticks the box. But as far as the place that's been built, the energy, the culture, it becomes a really good ability to grab talent. Mm-hmm. Now, for us, that is in the form of, it's a little different now being remote and all, but there's still a community. There are still other things that really help us kind of through that process. And the biggest win right now is the ability to also replicate and maintain that culture. And I think even more so hiring remote, we hired nearly 20 people through COVID, and being able to lean on the culture that we have is really the only thing that differentiates a business. And to be able to show that there are a community behind that message as well is what strengthens it for us. But getting folks to come out into the Navy Yard is not the easiest thing in the world to do when you're building a business and you're competing with some of these big tech companies. But the appeal, again, in the community of Newlab and the possibility that it unveils really has been a huge win for us and an asset for the last 5 years.
That's great to hear. That's so important about talent, and especially with so many companies that are competing for great engineering talent and inventors and entrepreneurs. So maybe you can tell us a little bit about what is next for StrongArm, as you had the first pilot at Newlab with the exoskeleton, to a pilot that helped advance your Fuse sensor product. Can you tell us anything about what's in store for the roadmap in the future?
Yeah, I think the thing that we're driving really is education and understanding in an old archaic industry that is now rapidly getting driven into Industry 4.0 into the future. I think that the way that we look at the challenges here, it's less that we need to create safety widgets to help create a better day, but rather we need to give a voice for safety in the operational decision-making process. And I think right now that time becomes critical as decisions are now going to be made completely remote, but there's no data point on the most sensitive and dynamic and intelligent part of the Industry 4.0 cycle, which is the industrial athlete themselves. So it's our hope to not only continue to develop new things through our ecosystem with Newlab that allow us to sense it, because again, we believe if you measure it, you can manage it, but we also are going to look at new processes that allow us to embed that safety information into the operational decision-making and give people a new way to relook the way that they manage their workforce. And we want to create a better future for the industrial athlete by creating a new way to manage workflows, not based on punitive metrics, but on a win-win-win type metric that is based off of something good. And for us, that is the delta of the safety score and how improving that improves operations overall.
Amazing. Here's a question from our audience. How do you expect Newlab to support you as you continue to grow further? Which I think is an interesting question. So as Newlab grows and you have your roadmap ahead of you, how do you expect Newlab to continue to support you as a growing, thriving company as you continue to scale and be bigger as a team, and from a revenue and valuation perspective, how do you see Newlab helping that?
I think Newlab right now is helping us just by putting a roof over our head while we're in this kind of strange environment. For us, being able to have the flexibility through COVID has been helpful. I mean, we spun up a new product. We had to deploy a pretty rapidly a great deal of product through COVID. Our supply chains were a little bit wacky, as everyone had to deal with. So we were able to actually lease half a floor here in the building, an additional floor to do fulfillment. And kind of having that flexibility is how we're going to win. And I think Newlab is being a really great partner with that. As we grow and scale even further, our hope is to continue to leverage more of the ecosystem to drive further innovation. We're getting into a place where it's again, we need to almost look a little bit deeper into the future in terms of where we're bringing things into the fold. And there's a lot of companies working on some compelling stuff. You know, machine vision and AI, as you mentioned earlier, are all things that are on our roadmap, and being able to have access to that through the ecosystem is the other way that we're going to get support and just continue to grow what everyone's doing here.
Great. And here's another question, probably in general for Newlab, but I also think it's interesting from a specific member point of view. Can you tell us more about how you facilitate investment opportunities? So maybe, during the time periods of fundraising, Sean, maybe you can tell us about like any connections that Newlab helped facilitate, or even just a part of the maybe connections to the community that might have assisted with investment opportunities.
Yeah, I mean, for the folks that are going to have the chance to visit Newlab, I mean, it's been described as a cathedral of innovation, right? And that does have that. It does have that appeal, and it's not just for new talent that you want to have jump on your train, but for investors as well, for partners, and for us, we've brought in investment dollars. We put investment dollars on a cap table just from people we've met conversationally walking around Newlab looking for things. There's a really strong appeal, and there is a really good positioning for businesses in there, when, especially if you get some of these venture capitalists to actually come out and when they're on their tourism routes, they see these things in action. It's what they're looking for. It's excited. And again, that culture comes very true to fruition, because I think there's a realness to the companies that are in there that creates an appeal, and that a bit of a litmus test for some of these VCs that are actually leaving their desks from FIDI and coming down here, right? So in a big way, that's been a really support. It's been a big support for us, and attributable to a lot of money on our cap table.
Okay, wonderful. And one thing I might mention, and maybe the team has taken advantage of this, Sean, but we also schedule regular pitch days with VCs and investors. So our community has access to, we have about 400 investors in our network, and we regularly schedule demo days. In addition to that, we also have pitch feedback sessions where founders like Sean can meet with our leadership team and review, let's say, a fundraising or pitch deck, and we deliver feedback. So we feel like those are some areas that we really assist in working with our teams on investment opportunities. And there's another question about application, but we'll get to that in a second. So any other parting words that you might have for our audience today, Sean, about growing a company, or maybe words of wisdom for someone who is just starting out as a founder? What maybe words of wisdom you've had from your experience?
Words of wisdom, probably not a lot of wisdom, but words of experience. I would say that I think that in general, this is a strange time to start companies, right? And I think that there's a huge benefit to having an ecosystem. And I think that the biggest part of this and creating remote and team members and everything, again, it all falls back to some assemblage of culture that's going to be the uniting front here. And you're going to need a filter for that. And what better filter for that than Newlab? So I think the only words of wisdom I had is, have an open eye to who could potentially be a co-founder floating around Newlab, and who could not just a collaborator, but maybe a business partner. And I think that is something that, we've taken advantage of in the past, and something that I wish we were able to do more of moving forward.
Okay, great. And, maybe one thing to point out there too, and you talked a lot about community in such a wonderful way, Sean, and how impactful it's been. And I think a big part of why we ask our members to participate in events like this, in hoping to attract the right type of future members, is it is all about who becomes part of our community as we scale and grow. Just like you're building up a team of talent, we look at it the same way. How do we create a community that you can continue to collaborate with, and that will add different perspectives as you're growing your company? So that's certainly an important piece for us at Newlab. And then maybe one question is, how long does it typically take from application to admission? It certainly varies, but we respond very quickly when someone applies. And the process is fairly swift. We vet that, and it depends a little bit on what type of space you need in order to join, but it can certainly be as short as a number of weeks for that process to happen. So I think those were the questions so far. Sean, it was so wonderful speaking with you. Interestingly, in the same building, but on different floors.
It's great to be here, and maybe next time we can do it on the same floor.
Yes, that will be soon. And in big part thanks to the work that Strong Arm is doing for safety.
Thank you for helping us spread the word.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you everyone for joining. Please visit our website, newlab.com, and we have an application on our membership page. You can also email us at membership@newlab.com. And thank you again for joining.